Yeah, guys, this is one of the things I'm working on is taking fewer trades, taking good setups, lowering uh, sort of the amount of contracts that I use. So, yeah, I definitely could have one sort of stayed in this first trade a little bit longer, trading this OR strategy. I did see that we was kind of starting to reject just above the 5 minute low, so I thought that we could potentially push down to this level. Didn't think that it would be this strong, but we just kind of whipsawed right back to kind of where we were. So if you guys look at the first 15 minutes, I typically like to trade the 5 and the 15 minute orb, primarily the 5 minute orb, but essentially we just kind of been in this range for the most of the day, right? We broke out of it, consolidating, and then came back into it. So we probably would just consolidate right within this first 15 minutes. Um, but yeah, could have taken that trade a little bit better. Probably could have taken a long somewhere down here. That's really what I wanted to do and just kind of ride it out. But again, sometimes the trades don't work out the way you plan them. Sometimes you have to be reacting to the market and just kind of be decisive around taking trades and just kind of getting out when you need to. So yeah, definitely could have had fewer contracts, especially when we start to see, you know, big 5 minute candles like this, right? Trading two micro. I'm trading MNQ right now. So yeah, trading two micros goes a long way. I'm seeing that we're starting to reject off this level. So I'm actually gonna jump into another trade right here with a stop just above and a take profit somewhere down here. Yeah, that 362 is definitely still on the table. I know we kind of came from that area, but we went up, came down, went up pretty fast, and so maybe we do find some sort of consolidation rejection area right here, and it looks like I may get taken out and stop loss. Yeah, probably get taken out here. I see that we're starting to curl over and may start to roll over right here, but let's just see. Probably could have waited for that next 15-minute candle to actually open before jumping into this trade, since this 15 minute is pretty bullish. So I'm closing this out. Nice. That hit. So that 360, that area is actually coming up right now. Let me see if I can expand this. There we go. Expand that out so you guys can kind of see it. But yeah, I mean, we've just sort of been in this range for the most part. I'm gonna move back up to the 5 minute time frame. Yeah, pretty dramatic move down. I don't know what this was to cause us to drop down this quickly, but I am seeing that we are starting to turn over on a few different levels as we've pushed up here. So maybe this is the area that we potentially reverse again. We broke out of that 15-minute orb for the second time, and we're right back to where we consolidated and broke down previously. So maybe we come up and tag that 400 level again. Um, I mean, this is pretty strong, right? To make a double bottom, triple bottom in some regard, right? And then to start squeezing up. So yeah, guys, orb strategy is really the way to go. Let me see if I can move. We want this to be all centered to the right just a bit. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm actually not really looking for entries right now, just because we did kind of push up, and so we're at a level that we've been at before, and typically when we start to come to these levels, we get a little bit more chop. So what I don't want to happen is, this 5 minutes starts to look pretty bearish, and then we don't fully reject back into this 15-minute orb. I would expect that is what happens, but I think we've consolidated a while in this range, and we could see a pullback into it, and we just kind of range within the first 15 minutes of the day. So, I mean, again, what I would be kind of looking for, not really interested in taking too many more trades unless we have a good setup, right? I typically like to buy these lows when we come into these levels. Ended up trying to catch this move, thing that we would come back lower and actually touch the low of the orb, but didn't happen. And I would expect momentum to start to dry up into lunch. So again, as we come into this 15-minute orb again, right? Maybe we just kind of doodle around the top of this range, somewhere around the 250s and 300s. Yeah, so Tesla, I typically just look at price action. I like to play the ranges. So with the orb strategy, what's interesting and nice about this is you can use the 5 minute opening range, or you can use like the 15 minute. This is the 15-minute opening range. And so for me, typically I just like to play the ranges. So, during this morning's momentum, we actually had this low put in. I ended up jumping in off of this. I mean, we had already put the low of the 15-minute in. We came out, wicked out, and got back into it. Once, twice, I jumped in on this, kind of rolled it up to the midpoint, got out at the midpoint. Which, I mean, again, we kind of pulled back here, and then we ramped up. So once I saw that we were closing back above that midpoint, I ended up taking the long into this momentum push, and then taking it out right before we touched the top of this orb. And again, right, you kind of see this rejection pattern playing out right now. You can easily take a short here and then ride it down to just before the middle of the range. That's how I like to play the orb, right? Typically, people like to play the breakout of the orb, but oftentimes these levels hold as support and resistance, and you can just play the momentum off of the you can play the ranges off of support and resistance, right? You have like clearly defined areas that you want to potentially sell at, right? You can have your stop just above the previous candle, which would be this candle, and then you can ride it down, 2 micros. So again, this actually would be a decent setup. Again, as we come into lunch, it's possible that we drop down, but again, Like, do we have volume to confirmation sellers that are willing to step in and kind of push it down during lunch, since we did have this push up and then we came right back down and floated right back up. So usually do breakouts, and it's annoying when it touches the high and the low over and over without breaking. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I would say that's probably one of the things that I had to learn pretty early on and pretty quickly, was that um, within the first 15 minutes of transacting, right? You have big money, you have institutions, you have all of these big players, you have pent up overnight demand, and I would say oftentimes within like the first 5 to 15 minutes, you have a pretty defined range for the day. And those lows, they often hold. You can obviously see situations like yesterday where we broke that 15-minute orb and ended up selling off through the rest of the day. So I think when you do look at these levels, I think you should probably you should probably see them as levels of support first, or resistance first, before you look at them as a level of, hey, it's breaking down, right? I think, if you can train your mind to look for longs around these levels, because as you can see, especially off of a dip down, right? We had this big move down in the open, and you can see where buyers started to step in. That's where buyers started to step in. So either there are orders that are sitting just below the orb, right? Or there are this is where shorts are thinking, hey, let's go ahead and get out of this short. And I mean, obviously, when you look at when we came down here, you couldn't even get to this level. So you probably had shorts trying to cover. You probably had some orders sitting down here, maybe even around here, as they may have moved their orders up. We came right into that level and just kind of bounced right off of it. So again, it's not perfect, especially, for me, I'm thinking we didn't touch the low. And right here, when we started to kind of reject off of this area, this midpoint, I was thinking maybe we could come lower and retest that orb. But yeah, I think, initially just retrain your mind to view these levels as areas of support and resistance. And that's the reason why, momentum traders, they will jump into these trades as we get that breakout, because you have stop losses getting hit when we start to break above that orb level. And again, stop losses start to get hit when we break these lows as well, right? So momentum traders, they will jump in, but you also have to ask yourself, like, we came down this far, at what point do shorts begin to cover, right? At what point do shorts begin to cover? At what points do buyers begin to step in? At what levels do it make sense for price to find some type of a bottom? And so for me, at least, like, I feel most comfortable finding lows, like buying lows and buying versus like selling into selling, right? Because oftentimes, like, support is pretty clear. Like, if you have buyers, right, and you also have sellers who have to become buyers, then those key levels, they can act as like key bounce levels as well. So yeah, again, guys, right now, not too much happening. I do think that what we could be seeing right now is more consolidation at the top of this level versus a breakdown into these lows. So just be careful if you are playing long, if you thinking about going short. This could just be a chop area for the rest of the day, being honest. So yeah, don't plan on taking too many more trades. I'm actually gonna move this. I'll remove that. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about either the orb strategy. I'm not sure if anyone knows about like the Lux Algo orb. I ended up repurposing it and creating this so you can kind of see, you get that triangle just above that orb level, and we kind of push down off of that. This is essentially showing that there was a wick out of the orb level and a close back within. And so that's more of like a confirmation counter for me that, we could potentially go long. The same sort of setup happened right here where we wicked out of the low. We wicked out of the low and came back in, and then we wicked out of the low and came back in again. We had that second triangle pattern at the bottom, and so yeah, ended up taking this trade. But yeah, um, when this 5 minute closes, if it closes outside of this orb, then that triangle will be invalidated. This is actually just showing that we have buyers stepping in just below the low, the high of the orb now, right? So that's also pretty interesting that we got below 300, got back above 300, and now we're finding support just below this orb, right? So this is where we're finding support. I think the line in the sand is going to be that 293, which is like the midpoint of the top of that orb range. And I think we got room to go higher. So that's just kind of what I'm seeing. We probably come back into this zone, this level. Everybody that wanted to sell shorts, they jumped in at this point, and so I don't anticipate that you have that many more or that amount of selling that will occur as we come up to these levels again. So, do you worry about fair value gaps when using orb? No, not really. I know there are traders who use fair value gaps, and sometimes, like, I mean, I understand fair value gaps, right? Like, I know that there's a fair value gap right here, technically, um, that sort of thing. But no, I really, when you're playing a range, you don't really have to work. I mean, at least for me, I'm not worrying about fair value gaps and things like that. It's more so finding good areas to buy and good areas to sell. And if you can buy low and sell high, it doesn't get more complicated than that. I know oftentimes you will have um, you'll have traders overcomplicate buying and selling, but in reality, it if you can find where other people think that you should buy, right? You can buy at the same levels that they buy at. And oftentimes, like the orb, whether it's the 5 minute or if it's the 15 minute, or even if it's the 30 minute, once you have that orb, you can see where people didn't want to buy at and where they did want to buy at. And once you have those levels, it makes trading a lot easier, right? And then obviously, if these levels break, you can decide what you want to do. And, for some traders that don't like to play the breakdown, they may decide to do nothing, right? So what you'll notice is on my chart, the way I sort of trade and why I thought that we were pretty bullish into today was because we did have this consolidation. So this is the 4 hour overnight orb, and we had that consolidation and push up, and we were above this 4 hour orb overnight, and we essentially just kind of came right down to this level and held. Once I saw that we were above that 4 hour overnight orb and we were opening above that, that gave me more confidence that we would find some sort of a long off of these lows. If we open within this 4 hour range, then I probably would have been a little bit more cautious today going into the open. But yeah. All right, guys, I'll be right back. Not cutting off the stream. You guys can still check out these levels, and yeah, I'll be right back, guys. All right, guys, I'm back. What did I miss? Man, we are kind of pushing up. So yeah, I do. So yeah, we did see that consolidation right at that orb high, which again sort of gives us that validation that we want to go higher. I think 400 is still in play for today, right? We still have more room to the upside. Anyone that wanted to sell kind of happened earlier, so maybe we attempt to squeeze those shorts, push higher before we eventually come back lower. But I think we just kind of have to be patient and see the way it plays out. So might run to 680. Yeah, I can definitely see it going up that high. Now, how we get there is a totally different question, right? I do think that if we kind of zoom out on like the 1 hour, right, what we probably end up doing is putting in some consolidation around this level. It looks like it's starting to get bought up around here. And if we can come and retest that 500 level, and 600 is definitely in play. Um, so again, as long as we don't reject, because again, what we have been doing is we've been sort of making these, um, we've kind of just been slowly grind higher, big push down, slow grind higher, big push down, slow grind higher. So question then becomes, is this setting up for a bigger push lower? And I think in order for us to know whether or not we will see a push lower, we essentially would need to come back down and show that we're holding this 250 level, which we're starting to do right now, right? We're starting to do it right now. If we can kind of put in some sort of flag and kind of consolidate sideways like this before eventually breaking out, that could show that we have a higher low, and we kind of plan to continue to push. So yeah, guys. So this is an area that you really want to kind of watch and pay attention to. Either we get above, and here, let me actually do this because I think this is what. Let me remove these targets because we're not really playing those targets anymore. Show these targets. Okay, so again, we've broken above that orb high, and so it's kind of now or never. Either we're about to get a strong push higher and retest this first take profit level at 405, or we just kind of stall out here, doodle around before we eventually rocket higher. So again, you have to kind of ask yourself: is this right where you want to buy? Maybe you can kind of get it lower. One of the things I've also been noticing myself personally, and I would actually be interested in hearing folks in the chat, whether or not you have different levels that you are comfortable shorting at. Because for me, I never like shorting at the 50s. I feel like there may be room to the downside, but I try to get in before the 50s just to give myself a little bit of area. But wondering if you guys have levels that you typically will either short at or feel comfortable shorting at, or levels that you just absolutely won't short at. So I'll open it up to the chat. So we had Jan ask if we could explain the orb. So the orb, so ORB just stands for opening range break. That opening range can be typically either the 5, 15, or 30 minute. What you're seeing on the chart is the 15-minute ORB. So you mark out the high of the first 15 minutes and the low of the first 15 minutes. And traditionally, the way that the strategy is traded is if we get a break below this orb, then a break and a close below this orb low, then it would trigger a short. If we get a break and close above this orb high, it would trigger a long. So that's traditionally how it's traded by traders. For me, one of the things that I like to preach is